Xbox's Halo slips as fans feel the gears turning and the fallout from consolidation.
Japan feels the evil within Phil Spencer as he hi-fi rushes to close Tango Gameworks.
Arcane falls prey to the death loop of consolidation as they face Dishonored closure. Hello and welcome to Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me is the haiku master himself, Mr. Chris Figs.
Hey, what up, dude?
Okay, take a second. If we would have actually thought to make all of the opening statements we just ran through for the fun of bullshitting into haikus, that would have been top tier humor. And I would have never actually confirmed if they were haikus. I would have just let hopefully one listener be like, fucking 575, bro? Now you got me wondering. Japan feels the... Yeah, there's no way.
It's not even a little close. Not even close.
Is that an app? Haiku detector?
Haiku detector? Probably.
There's no way I'm going to be able to figure it out. We could definitely convert the Japan one into a haiku, but that's a different show for a different time, maybe in a parallel universe. But for today, we're here to talk about gaming through the lens of being PlayStation fans who do play everything and anything as we see fit, but do primarily enjoy gaming through the landscape of PlayStation. So we're here to praise and target the competition as we see fit, including PlayStation themselves. And with that in mind, we are going to get started on a show where we're going to talk about the not so quiet elephant in the room, the closures that are happening across the industry, Microsoft's being big among them right now, and see what you guys in the community think about what that is and how consolidation may or may not have played a part in it, and see if it changes your feelings, considering that for a while, the games industry, or at least the gaming fans in the industry, were very hyped about consolidation. Maybe that will change. Maybe it won't. We'll talk about Media Molecule coming back around and having somebody who was formerly from the studio talk a little bit about the new project and give a little bit of hints as to what might be coming down the line. We see we see Sony go rogue as they become traitors to the Helldivers community, depending on who you ask. And as they kind of looked at doing a PSN account link for Helldivers 2 on Steam, that ended up making the game unplayable for a large section of the player base, and more. But first, we're going to do what we always do, start the show off in a time-honored tradition of checking in on what I've been playing and what Chris has been playing, so that we can hopefully give you either the next game you should be looking out for, have on your radar, or maybe that you might want to avoid after you hear us talk about it and realize it may just not be your cup of tea. Chris, you got a nice, varied list this week. Let's start off with you. What you been playing? Let these people know.
I guess the quickest one we can go with first is Dave the Diver. I've just been continuing on. Not a roadblock, but I don't know what to do next. So it's kind of put me off on playing. But I do want to get back to that as I'm halfway. I'm almost done with the game and then halfway done with the trophies. So I want to get that one finished off. So I'm still really enjoying that. I hope you give it a shot one day. I think you'll like it. So
yeah, for sure.
That one for you.
All right, so you're back on Dead Island 2, man. Ooh. Let's talk about that before we get into the last two for you.
Yes. Dead Island 2. It's a weird game because I like it, but it's not polished, I guess. It's probably the best way to say it. There's some stuff about it that's a little wonky, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just kind of is what it is. But it does one thing that annoys the shit out of me. It's not cute in a video game to acknowledge that you're doing something too much. I hate that. Right? So every mission I've done in this game so far has required me to go to a door, and then I can't get in the door because I don't have a key card. So then I have to go search this area that it doesn't point out where the key card is. And one time I found it inside a zombie, which is interesting, but also an insane design choice.
Yeah.
But what annoyed the hell out of me was, after the 10th time doing this, now keep in mind, I'm pretty sure I'm still in the tutorial. So after the 10th time doing this, my character goes, all these key cards, I'm going to need a bigger wallet. And I was like, go fuck yourself. I literally out loud was just like, go fuck yourself. Like, this sucks, and you're forcing me to do it. And forcing is, again, a strong word. I'm choosing to play the game. But it's like, I would almost rather they don't acknowledge it. Like, just don't.
If you know you have it in the game.
Right, because if I know I'm making a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? If at work, I was like, oh, I ran out of meat every weekend. And every time it happened, I just looked at my boss and goes, haha, I should probably order more meat. But then I never order more meat. Right? Like, I'm just being an asshole.
I mean, fair enough, yeah.
And that's how it felt when it said that, because I was getting annoyed. Like, the game knew that I was getting annoyed with it. And it was like, I'm annoyed too. I'm the video game character, and this also sucks for me. And I'm like, bro, come on.
That's funny because, that kind of reminds me of, it's not like a killer for me, but I hate when games too closely follow the rule of 3 and you just feel it left and right. And it's like, okay, dude, I get it. You're going to make me do this 3 times and this 3 times and this 3 times and this 3 times. And it's one of those things where there's been a few games where they try and have a snarky character where they kind of make a reference to the rule of 3. And I'm like, you're making this worse. Don't highlight the fact that you're aware, because that means you could have fucking changed it. You designed it, recognized it, wrote dialogue to it, had someone record it, instead of going, maybe we shouldn't have everything in the game follow the rule of 3. Maybe.
Yeah. And the worst, there's that annoyance levels up, right? It levels up when it's like a Grand Theft Auto game will have like 15 dots you can check, right? But you always have to check 3. It's not like I know which dot is the correct dot, so I can go to that dot. It's like, no, the 3rd dot you drive through, that's the one that'll be the right one. And that's no matter even worse what than order. That. Right. Yeah. If I know where to go, I should be able to do it immediately. But no, they're not made that way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of games that are designed in such a way that if you come into them with knowledge of what it is, that you can shortcut the game. I always love that. And I think that's what people like about like Resident Evil and all these different games, where the whole idea is that since the game doesn't change and you can learn where everything's at, that you can learn how to get through the game in 2 hours. Like that's fun. I don't do it with every game like that, but I do sometimes like to see a game and be like, I figured a way how to cut this down. A good example of that is like, replaying Bloodborne. It's like, how quickly can you run through something like this? It's like, yeah, this is kind of cool. You know what bosses are necessary and which ones aren't. And you start kind of seeing how quickly you can make it through Old Yarnum and then how quickly you can make it through this section. And it's just a cool idea.
That's like,
so yeah, I'm always annoyed by games that specifically be like, no, you're going to try this many number of times and then we'll make it appear on this number.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, and you talking about that goes back to like even Fallout 3 is my favorite example of that, where like you can walk straight to the Smith Casey garage and go to the Tranquility Lane there immediately. That's the first thing you can do in the game.
Yeah.
Skip like, 10, 12 hours of content right there. So
yeah, that's the thing about a lot of like when you make a game really open in its actual design, which is what a lot of people like about things like Breath of the Wild. Like, for as much as Breath of the Wild didn't click with me, I definitely understand and kind of revel in the fact that this is a game designed to be where from the main starting little floating peninsula area that you can start on in the game, that you can just get a boulder, freeze it, swing a big ass hammer at it, grab the ball before the time thing goes off, and then just chunk yourself into Ganondorf's castle and be like, I'm here, bitch. Like, that's cool, because there's just something about being able to do that that's like, oh, this is cool that the game accounted for me wanting to just skip everything. Yeah.
Like, you don't have to let me beat the game, but the fact that I can do it is cool. You know what I mean?
Well, and it's kind of like, of course, it kind of became rote because it became expected to a degree, but I kind of always liked that little period when Ubisoft had secondary endings for every game, where it was like, oh, at the beginning of Far Cry 4, if you just sit in Pagan Min's room for this many minutes, when he tells you to sit and wait for him, then he comes back and you just don't play the game and he goes and takes you to spread your mom's ashes, which is the whole point of the game. And you're like, cool. And like, does that really matter? No, it's not that big of a deal. Or it's pretty much everyone who did that still going to go and play the real game. of course. But it's cool that you acknowledge that I should be able to do that.
I would love to read the review of a person who just waited and didn't realize there was more.
And they're like, bullshit, I paid $60 for
Right,
this.
exactly. I'm refunding your your 5-minute video game, Ubisoft. I would love to see that.
That would be fantastic, actually. I do love that there's almost undoubtedly someone where the game was just like, hey, wait here. And they were like, sure thing, bro.
Yeah. Okay. What's all this
Bet.
crashing outside? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Whatever.
I do love Far Cry 4, though. One of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that Dead Island 2, Far Cry 4 is excellent, by the way. Like I love 3, and 4 follows so much from 3 that some people are like, well, it feels a little uninspired. And that may be true, but here's the thing. I love 3, and it has the originality in its favor and everything, but 4 is just more of 3 and sometimes better. How can you be mad at that?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Hot take. Everyone loves Voss, but like, whatever.
I mean, Voss is great. Actually, the thing about replaying 3 not that long ago is I just got reminded yet again how fucking weird it is to build Voss up to clearly be the villain and then to randomly just kill him off and then still have a third of the game where you got to go fuck with Holt, who you don't even know. The game is giving you no chance to see this person, fear him, have any beef with him, and yet you kill Voss, and just because he's Voss's boss, you're like, fuck that guy, I'm going to get him.
Right.
It doesn't even make sense.
No.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. It makes the whole game go from feeling plausible to feeling like it's just what's the dude's name in that game? I can't even think of it right now. I want to say Ethan, but I've played Resident Evil recently, Ethan, and that's why it's in my head. But regardless, it's just the dude, Jason is his name. It's just Jason trying to tell a girl at the bar a story of how he survived something that he didn't really survive. That's what it feels like when you do it the way that they chose to do it. Because it just feels like, yeah, you built this person up and you go through this really epic final boss fight-esque thing, and then the game just keeps going. And then you get to Holt. And there's a couple of cool moments between getting to Holt, but you get to Holt and it feels so anticlimactic in comparison to doing the boss stuff. And you're like, who the fuck designed this game? Like, who was like, no, we can't just end the game at boss, guys. Skyrim came out, but people expect more. I wouldn't be surprised if that's it, because if you remember, after you kill Voss, you get the wingsuit, which feels like an in-game reward anyway. I think they were just like, no, guys, we got to create a whole new section of the island and got to create all this shit. Who knows?
Yeah, but even then, his whole ending isn't really all that satisfying for the game. So.
You're right, but I think that's just ultimately poor design, but who knows? I still love 3. It's a great game.
Well, I'm more saying that would have been a terrible ending to a video game.
Maybe also true.
Definitely true. I'm sorry, brother.
Yeah, who knows? But going back to Dead Island 2, I'm not surprised it's a little janky, because I don't mean this in any kind of bad way. The game screams, and I think it's intentionally meant. It's by Deep Silver, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah.
Is that still who's the publisher behind it?
Embracer, Deep Silver.
Yeah, all the people that got bought. Yeah, Consolidated. Exactly. But what I mean by that is the game screams AA in a way that it feels like it wears that on its sleeve in an endearing way, or in a potentially endearing way. You know what I mean?
I don't know. The thing is, like, I'm more just making fun of the game than like actually talking badly about it, because I was enjoying my time playing it. I didn't dislike anything I was doing. It was just one of those things where it's like, all right, I get what you're trying to do here, but there's far too many examples in this game of like, hey, you need to go get a key so you can open this door so you can go in here where the quest is. And then you're going to do that again. And then you're going to do that one more time. And then there's going to be like optional stuff in treasure chests that you can get, but you have to search the area that you're in for a key that you can't find because there's no, Dying Light has this thing where you can press L2 and everything important that you can interact with lights up. And this game doesn't seem to have that. Maybe it's a skill card later down the line, but it doesn't have that. So searching for stuff is a little bit frustrating because some things like blueprints and, stuff you can craft, important key items, basically like collectibles, those all have this tiny glow, but it's not crazy. But the items that I've been looking for specifically, they didn't, which is weird. So there was one quest loot that I just gave up on and walked away. So that was fun.
I feel like Dead Island 1, like, of course, it has a story, but it kind of reminds me of a little bit like, well, I was going to say it reminds me a little bit of like Dead Rising 1, where the story plays huge backseat to just wanting to create an environment where you have a reason to kill zombies with interesting items. That's what the first Dead Island was, because I remember everybody freaking out. It's like, you can throw deodorant at a zombie. Like, yeah, but what the fuck is that going to do to a zombie? If I'm being honest.
And it's funny because that's one of the things, like, it kind of relates to one of the things that frustrated me about this game, because there's stuff in the environment that you can't interact with that you could definitely hit a zombie with, you know? But the game forces it into specific weapons. So there was one place where I was fighting in a mansion and my weapon broke and I didn't have anything else, but there are candlesticks, like brass candlesticks everywhere in the room that I can't interact with. So it's like you decorated this room with weapons in a melee weapon game and then didn't let me use them as weapons. It was a very weird design decision.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it's interesting to me that zombie games became very much about how interesting can you get to where you use the environment in ways to help you kill stuff. And I mean, that's kind of across the board, even in games like The Last of Us stuff, they try to play into that to a degree. But I always thought that was interesting because I guess it's just when you're in a world where there's zombies, you're going to stop giving a shit about the world around you. So you're just going to use your environment to your advantage where you can. Yeah. I like the thought process, but sometimes it ends up playing out weird. Hey, look, dog's yelling. All right, Chris is muted, but that's okay because I know the next game we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about Sea of Thieves because Sea of Thieves is now out on PlayStation. We have been talking about working towards the platinum, and we have actively made steps toward that. So we've played a few times. We've hit the seas hard, and we've done a little thieving. We've had my boy Donovan with us too. So, Chris, it's been a while since both of us have played Sea of Thieves, and they coupled this release alongside the release of the new season as well. So there's some massive changes going along in there. And one thing I've still not messed around with yet is playing on a solo server where you're the only ship so that you can't interact with the other players. I
actually did do that, yeah.
So what'd you think of it?
I didn't like it because a lot of the stuff, like, I would take a chest to someone and it would be like, you can only trade this during high seas, and it's like, okay, well, why would I want to do this then? Just to swim? Like, okay, but no thanks,
Huh. So you're saying like you go and you collect and you get your treasure and stuff and you bring it back to an outpost, but they won't let you sell except for very specific times?
It seemed like if I was giving back quest items, I could sell them. But like when I was carrying around that exquisite shoes, right? That box of those.
Oh, the crate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the crate. And it didn't seem like I could sell them. So at least the person I went to, it said like, you can't sell this here unless you're in the high seas mode. So maybe I was doing something wrong, but that's what happened to me. So,
well, I know like when we were playing, right? And the bad thing about Sea of Thieves is that it's a game that you've kind of got to know that you're dedicating 2 or so hours minimum to playing, because that's what it takes to get swept up in all these different islands you're supposed to go to. And like we did a treasure vault last night. And so we had to go to multiple islands, use this compass, pull these pieces together, get this little key basically, and go find the island that they were talking about. And all that's great, and it's really cool. But before you know it, you blink and you've been playing for 2 hours, and we started, at a weird time, and it's kind of like, oh shit, I got to get off of here because I have work. But Sea of Thieves is super fun when you have the time to jump into it. But as we were playing, it's like I agree with you, and I do prefer playing this way when I know that I don't have the restriction of needing to go to bed at a certain time, where you're just kind of like, anything I see on the horizon, I just want to know that I can interact with it, so I want to go do it. So a skeleton ship pops up beside us. You're like, fuck yeah, I want to take the skeleton ship on. And then a shark comes up beside us. You're like, fuck yeah, I want to kill the shark. And then there's a player who's sailing by, and I'm like, I don't want to lose everything we've got. I got to go to bed, and I want this play to mean something. And you're like, no, fuck that. We're going to go kill these people. And I appreciate the way you're playing it because, as you said today, whenever we're recording a day later because of schedule issues. But I thought it was funny that, like, as you were talking about today, you have less of a bedtime than I do by nature of the difference of our jobs. So it's like, I'm very much like, bro, I got to get off. And you're just over here like, fuck it, let's play for 4 more hours. It doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, in that instance, it's less because we were on our way to end it. So for me, it was just like we're just doing stuff on the way.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
I mean, it was fun.
Yeah.
The skeleton ship popping up, I just never seen this. So a lot of the events in that game are just random. They're dynamic. They pop up. And so we were sailing really close to a gigantic rock formation that's sticking out of the water. And at that point in time, a skeleton ship decides to come up directly to our left side. And as soon as it gets out of the water and I'm skirting around the edge of this big ass rock, it just smacks dead into the rock. And that shit was so funny because I don't know if anyone else actually saw it the way that I saw
didn't see it.
But it was so funny. And then it took the boat like 3 minutes to catch back up to us. And I thought it was funny because it's a NPC, interaction. So it is just enemy AI. And I thought, how does the game not have some kind of safeguard to where it can just respawn the ship, like pull the ship under, respawn it beside us again? Thought that was real funny. But I've been enjoying coming back to the game. I think that there's a magic to that game that's really hard for other things to kind of capture. But at the same time, it's a game that exudes all the same potential issues as a lot of other games as a service games, to where I'm having a great time with the gameplay loop right now. And they've added a lot of interesting stuff to it still. But at the end of the day, I can see the horizon of, okay, I've done a lot of this and I've done it for months now, and I just don't want to play the game for another 6 months. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that is staved off in any capacity by whatever, ends up continuing to pop up. Maybe approaching the game in a different way where we're doing the tall tales would be a way to kind of help stave that off. But it's just interesting that I can already feel the loop, like, okay, yeah, this is definitely the loop that I remember, I recognize. And I do the same thing with Destiny, where I hop back in, I'm like, man, this game is way more fun than and I always thought the game was fun, but it's even more fun than my memory served.
Yeah.
And then you start to play a little bit more, and you start being like, this is the Destiny I remember. And now I kind of remember why I eventually stopped playing this every time,
Yeah. I think the thing that will keep me on it is if we don't get to a point where we're like, oh, well, this doesn't make us enough money, Like I want to hop on and like even if it doesn't net us any gold, but we feel like, hey, let's do the Pirates of the Caribbean shit. Let's just play through that.
Yeah.
If any one person in our group, whether it's you or Donovan, that to me is just like, dude, that's not why I want to play this, because that's what happens with Destiny. Is it's like, okay, well, we can't play Gambit anymore because we've exhausted all the resources that we could earn from playing Gambit, and
but what if
I like
Gambit's
playing
just
Gambit.
fun?
Like I'm just like that was always the thing. I've always tried to tell my friends, like, I just want to have fun playing Destiny, and Nightfalls and shit are not fun for me. So that's what I don't want to happen with Sea of Thieves. But yesterday was fun. We made a lot of money, and I'm going for a ship. But like sometimes I just want to do the story content, or sometimes I just want to sail the seas and go grief other players. Like that's something I also want to do. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's like, don't get me wrong, some of the most frustrated times I've ever had gaming are when you are just killing it and you've got so much treasure, and then an asshole comes up and just ruins it all. But it's also so memorable because how often does that really happen in a game, right, where you get that feeling of like, shit, all that work gone and wasted, but also that was kind of cool. Like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's something about the dynamism of the game and the fact that you could just see another player. Like when we had that, when we were playing last and we had that ship pop up and they started trying to shoot us, the other player's ship, and they shot us. And I love that they shot us because every time that you see another ship in Sea of Thieves, you kind of have to do that thing of, I can't afford to find out if you're going to be friendly. So I have to be on the offensive. And then if you don't attack back, I'll keep going. But if you do try to turn, I'm ready to go. What's up?
See, but that doesn't even make sense to me, right? Because if I'm playing, I'm just going. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
shoot. I'm not gonna do any of that because once you shoot at me, I'm gonna shoot back. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't start fights. I finish them. Famous words. And that to me is like, why? I don't get that logic. Why am I just gonna fire at people and hope they don't? Oh, oh no, I'm good. I'm a friend. Fuck you. You shot at me. I was like, oh, I got sucker punched in the street, but it was only to see if I was friendly. I'm not gonna punch him back. That's crazy talk.
It's like fucking Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton. One of them shoots the other, and then it's just Burr like, oops, sorry.
Right, exactly.
I was just shooting to see if you were friendly or not.
Yeah, we only blew up the
me.
ships to see if you would attack us, Japan said to Pearl Harbor.
No, it's so good. But no, the game's great. It's good seeing it back or seeing it come to PlayStation and have all that stuff going on. It's cool seeing the way that they're approaching doing basically the level of control they've already had, but letting it extend onto PlayStation, where if you want to play only with people that you know are on console, you can limit yourself down to that, which does tend to help with people who are cheaters. Mm-hmm. As most people who play Call of Duty or anything like that know, if you cut it down to only people on consoles, you do cut out a huge section of cheating population. So anyway, it's cool seeing all that, and I'm excited to see the game continue to kind of grow and try new things. And part of the challenge of live service games is coming back into them and actually wanting to interact with the new stuff, as opposed to falling back into the same groove that works. That's the challenge. And one of the things I like about it, Chris, is that you've played quite a bit of Sea of Thieves, but I don't think you ever got as into it as we did. So there's still things that you've just not seen in the game. Mm-hmm. So you have really nascent eyes that just everything I think feels a little bit more cool to you, because there's things where you're like, oh shit, I didn't even know that was a thing. And we have a little bit of that. Well, we know it. It's cool, but we it's a known quantity. A good example is like when we were doing the treasure vault yesterday, I already knew that if you don't get all the crap out, the door closes on you eventually and everything. So we were working toward that, right? And even though it still surprised us a bit because I didn't realize we had started the counter, ultimately it wasn't that surprising. But I remember the first time I did a treasure vault and I was like, there's so much treasure, and I'm fucking off and fucking around, and suddenly the door shuts behind me and hours of work went out the door and I couldn't get out and I died and I got none of the treasure. And I was like, well, that fucking sucks, but also that was super cool.
What were you doing that you weren't bringing? Were you just taking forever to bring the treasure out? Just exploring the room?
I'm just exploring the room, jumping up and around, looking at the stuff, thinking that it's just going to be in there, trying to figure out the medallion puzzle. So, and then suddenly we just look behind us in the door. And it's like, oh. And then the water starts rising. It's like, oh, fuck. So, it's funny because, of course, I'm kind of ruining that for other people. But part of the fun of that game is just letting the dynamic events actually happen and see what you can do. So that's one of those games where experiencing it is definitely half of it, but it's also the surprise of it all. So it's a game where word of mouth helps sell it, but also just playing it without knowing what the fuck's going to happen makes the game so much better. So you should definitely attempt to do it with as little know-how as possible, and you'll probably have a better time.
Oh, yeah.
So there you have it.
Great.
All right. Got a little bit of Balatro talk in us. I see you've still been playing. I've still been playing a little bit. So you're getting deeper in the game. And one thing I noticed is, Chris and I are big trophy freaks. So Chris and I are discussing the trophy list. And when I tell you that there are some wild trophies, I'm not going to say it's an impossible trophy list.
It's not.
But, man, it is, you have to beat, basically, there's stakes, which are difficulties, which we've talked about in previous episodes. But you only unlock that stake per deck by beating the previous difficulty with that deck. So if you have the red deck, you've got to beat it on the white stake, beat it on the red stake, beat it on the green stake, keep going. And then if you want to do that with another deck, you got to go through that. So here's the wild part. I'm pretty sure that we saw a trophy that said you have to beat the gold stake with every deck in the game.
Yep. That was the one, because we were reading it and I'm like, okay, I could do this. One gold stake, that seems crazy, but I could get it done. Probably do that with green. I think that would be my choice for that.
Yeah.
And then we got to the end of the list and it was like completionist plus win on gold stake with every single deck in the game. And like there's some intimidating ones like it was fill your collection.
Dude, that's pretty wild too.
That doesn't seem
That's
that bad.
hard. Well, it's really hard to get the soul gem, and that's the only way you can get legendary jokers. And there's quite a few legendary jokers, and there's no guarantee that getting a soul gem will get you one you haven't had.
Wait, what the fuck is a soul gem?
That's how you get the legendary jokers.
I've never had a legendary joker.
I got a legendary joker that let me skip the boss blind. It just ignored the boss, the effect of the boss blind. Oh, it was sick.
That's a great one.
And it was negative.
Ooh, that's good.
So it gave me another
negative
joker
is
slot.
the best, I think.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah.
Like none of the other ones are like they're good utility ones, but by the time you're doing stuff like multiplying your multipliers multiple times, you're like, I'll just get planets over the multipliers, you know? I don't know. Negative seems like the most important one.
Yeah, getting planets and leveling your hands is definitely a big part of the game. But I continue to be impressed by the game. It is something where I think we're hitting a point where, as much as I enjoy the game and enjoy talking about it, it is a known quantity. I think it's going to be one of those things where you have the one new secret every now and then you want to talk about. But I do the same thing with Sea of Thieves, where do I ruin the fun of letting other people discover this thing by talking about it on here, like the Gross Michael into the Cavendish, where it's like, if you don't know, and I didn't, I ignored the fucking Gross Michael every time I saw it because I was like, why would I spend money on this thing that's going to break? And then when I finally did it, and then I got that, I was like, oh shit, okay, this is amazing. And I want those moments to happen with everybody else. So it's like we are reaching a point where all I can really continue to say is buy Balatro, play Balatro. You will most likely enjoy Balatro.
Yeah, Balatro's good.
It's so great. So the only other thing that's really left to talk about at that point is Stellar Blade for me. I'm quite a bit further into it. I'm not going to come super far into it. I like how varied the game is. I don't think it's necessarily always killing it in the mechanics department as like the absolute best, but everything it tries is good enough, if not genuinely good, to great. And its combat is really fun. So I think when I pull all that together, I'm surprised at how often the game wants to surprise its player and kind of throw you off balance and do something new and make you push against the mechanics in a very different way. I continue to be impressed by that. And small thing, but there's something to be said about developers that pay attention to conversations happening in the gaming landscape and are either already working against what the complaints are or are listening and adjusting their game in the way it goes. Because in its effort to try and make sure the game is not unplayable to anything, the game offers all sorts of help and hints and stuff. And like we mentioned, there's story mode difficulty, which apparently, as was told to me by Velvet, means that the game slows down when you have an opportunity to perfect dodge or perfect parry. And if I'm not mistaken, it gives you the button prompt so that not only do you have a much larger window to activate it, you know what button you're supposed to hit. And that's pretty cool. But what I like is that you remember the complaints I had around God of War Ragnarok, where it was just obnoxious with how the fact you'd get to a puzzle. And even though I'd already figured the puzzle out and was just essentially trying to land the puzzle where I needed it to land, the character just wouldn't shut the fuck up and be like, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should try this. And I'm like, I know that. I've already figured that out. Why are you telling me that? And how it just feels annoying because it feels like the game is undermining people who actually can figure the puzzles out. And where I like about that is there's a hint system in Stellar Blade, but all it is in the top right corner, you see a directional pad with the left button glowing that says hint. So if you're just exploring and the game thinks you're taking too long, it may flash the hint thing up, but you don't have to hit it. And if you know that you're just exploring the area to make sure you get everything, it's good and it doesn't give anything away. And then if you actually do need the help, you just hit a button to get it. And it makes me wonder, why was that just not what God of War did? Why did God of War not just say, hey, if you think you need a hint, here's a button, you can press it. One of the side characters will make a remark that may help you. Yeah. It's a subtle but really nice change of pace in comparison to a lot of AAA. So also, the conversation is what the conversation is. Eve is so damn adorable. and I may have made almost the perfect woman. I have got a knitted dress on
Boy.
that is more conservative than the most of the clothes in the game, but it's a look that does it for me. And I've got glasses on her now. I've kind of got the librarian who's strict but looks like she's a little freaky look going on. And my wife, it's so funny because my wife's been watching me play the game here and there. And so at one point I had this, one of the pre-order suits on. I think it's the 5th Air Squadron one. It's like it's red. And it does away with the big wings that are in the green one that you start the game with. And it just has ass. And when you're just running in that game, it's like the camera's just pulling down and you're just seeing ass. And my wife she was like, it just looks like ass is all you see in this game. It's like the game's focusing on it. And it definitely is. But I like that there's a good collection of things that you want to do, because I sent my wife, I was playing it at lunch today. So I sent her a picture because she wasn't home for lunch of the knitted dress I put on her. And she was like, it's so conservative. I was like, yeah, it is. But also it hints at something a little bit more. So we're just having this dumb conversation about this fictional character. But I do like the level of control in the game. And it's funny because I always think about how when it comes to character creators, I don't usually spend much time on it. But if you give me a character that already I like and I like the design of, I'm way more willing to spend time adjusting the character's look with things that are in the game than I am to spend time making my own character, because I just don't give a shit. That's...
I can vibe with that, yeah.
I'm assuming you've not gone back to Stellar Blade yet?
No, I've got too many games I'm playing. Maybe I should go back to Stellar Blade, because honestly, I haven't really been feeling a whole lot. Everything I've been playing is like an hour here, an hour there. Again, will be there. But I don't know. We've talked about it, but...
Yeah, I think you need to set your expectations for Stellar Blade reasonably. I think it's a good game. It's a really good game. And I think its score that it got Metacritic-wise is right about where it should be. And I think it's a really good first game of this scale from a studio like this. Like I said, it just does a lot. It does a lot good enough to great, to where I don't think the game's ever just absolutely going to blow your mind. But you're often going to be like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. One thing I like about it is that the game is very clearly using a lot of pop culture reference, and it very clearly has reference to the Matrix. But I enjoy that it's both leaning into and wearing its inspiration on its sleeve and is a little on the nose with it. But then also it's often taken pretty big swings and changing that. Because, part of it is you're Eve, and the guy who's the companion for you in the game is Adam. And that seems real low-hanging fruit. And then I don't want to say too much, but there's a city in the game, and there's a person in the city that plays very big into the role of how the Matrix kind of viewed the world and stuff. And all this is playing against some very different ideas from what you expect from looking at the Matrix. But it's really cool to see, and I've enjoyed how varied the game is. One thing I remember talking about was how Mark, one of our listeners and patrons, was talking about the demo didn't do enough for him to make it feel like the game was very wide and explorative. And I found that maybe it's not just as big or explorative as Nier, but the second area of the game that you kind of come into is quite large. And I think it solves that problem. So, Mark, it may not push you towards wanting to play it, but if you're ever wondering, the game does have much more wide open areas. There's lots of side content that you can kind of go and find little nooks and crannies. There's a lot of upgrade material and hidden paths, and almost like the idea of Diablo's treasure goblins, where there's just little robots that won't fight you, but if you find them, they'll try and run. And if you can kill them in time, then you'll get rare materials and stuff. So it's been cool to see.
Like in Nier, right?
Is that in Nier? I don't remember that.
Yeah, they have the little robots that give you a little extra treasure. Am I making that up? I swear they have those.
You might be right, but I don't remember that. Huh. But you very well could be right. I just don't remember that right now.
Oh, okay, well, I wonder how this make you feel. I've been considering going back to Nier and finishing the platinum.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
If anything, I'd be curious, mainly because they are similar in some ways and different in quite a few other ways. I'd be curious to see you play Nier Replicant and see how the difference is between the two for you, and see if one lands more than the other for you or not. but who knows?
It's definitely a consideration.
All things are considerations.
But I got to be
right?
honest, I think I have a little bit of Destiny to play before I do that. So,
What's funny is you play enough Destiny that your hollow little thing there actually rings like you might play it one of these days.
I downloaded it recently. I don't know if I still have it there, but I would give it a shot because I love the story of Nier. It's just everything else isn't my favorite.
Fair enough. One thing I thought was interesting about Stellar Blade is it does play a little bit around with wanting to kind of jump genre a little bit. But really, it's almost so baked in a way where it just feels like the game is a third-person shooter and third-person hack and slash. Whereas Nier is very purposely bouncing around between, I'm going to be a third-person hack and slash action game. I'm going to be a twin-stick shooter. I'm going to be a bullet hell. I'm going to be a third-person isometric, game, and it wears its wanting to bounce around its genres on its sleeve, and I love that about it. And I'm glad that this game didn't try to ape that, because this game's aping stuff from a lot of different places. But one of the great things is most art is inspired by other art. As long as you can wear that inspiration on the sleeve, no problem. As long as you're still able to shine through and go, look, this is where I'm different and unique, and I am using this inspiration, but I'm doing something still interesting and new within that inspiration, and that's all that really matters. So
I agree completely with that statement.
All right, man. Well, do you think you're ready to hop into the community take real quick?
Let's hop in.
Let's hop in. The community's take, if you do not know, is where we ask a question to you, the community, usually on social media. So that is, of course, Twitter, or X if you're one of those people, at Triangle SQRD. You can find us in our Discord, which is linked in the description below, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcast services, where you can hop in, and we have a dedicated thread for that where we ask the question, and you can, of course, give your answers there all in one repository, as well as just joining us for general day-to-day conversation or talking about things that we mentioned in the podcast, like so many of you do. We appreciate you. The community's take question this week was simple. It was, with the industry's big wave of acquisitions, we've been seeing the flip side of these big moves with closures and layoffs in many of the acquired studios. Have these revelations changed your opinion on mass acquisitions? Should selling the studios be attempted before closing them, if possible? And just because of what the community's take is, I'm going to loop in the big news that comes around that. We're going to kind of talk about this as one thing. So a lot of closures have been happening in the industry. We know there's been a lot of layoffs in the industry, but we haven't seen that absolutely lead to full-on studio closures super often. But that tide is starting to change. So Roll7, the developer behind Ollie Ollie World and more recently Rollerdrome, has been announced by Private Division to be closing in a big wave of cost-cutting maneuvers that are happening there. And more recently, in this week, we have had Microsoft announcing that they will be closing 4 Bethesda studios, 2 of which are more household names that people may know, such as Tango Gameworks, which is the studio behind The Evil Within, and more recently Hi-Fi Rush, and Arcane Austin, the team behind the not-so-beloved Redfall, but also the cult classic Prey, which is a game that reviewed pretty well. And people love the game now, but it didn't necessarily light the sales charts on fire. So they're a little less surprising, though no less of a gut punch. So this is an article actually that is from The Guardian, from Kedza McDonald. I'm just referencing this as an easy way to talk about it. So last month, games company Take-Two Interactive announced it would reduce its global staff by 5%, laying off 580 people to reduce cost. It was one of such many announcements in 2024, but this case is especially egregious because Take-Two's own Rockstar Games, which of course, as you know, publishes Grand Theft Auto, aka the most successful game in the history of the world, and is definitely not short of profits. Last week, Bloomberg reported on internal documentation showing the likely victims of these cuts. Studios Intercept Games in Seattle and Roll7 in London are set to close. Both are part of the Private Division branch, the giant publisher's indie game label. So you look at both of those going on, and then you actually look at games that are coming through on Microsoft's side, such as Hi-Fi Rush, which came out. And if you recall, part of the reason that this conversation gets so tricky online is because, as people like to say, there are receipts that kind of speaking contrary to what we're hearing from Microsoft right now.
Mhm.
So one of the things that came about when you have something saying, "Hey, we're closing these studios," one of the easy things to assume, and it feels pretty intuitive to do so, is that you're closing studios because they're not performing well enough. But you have a game like Hi-Fi Rush, which was universally critically acclaimed. I mean, people love the game. It won plenty of awards, very well reviewed. It was a shadow drop, and it hit the news big. Then the game came to PlayStation and seemingly did it kind of all over again. But back last year, after the game Shadow dropped, there were some rumors going around that the game was not doing very well and that Microsoft did not think that the game was hitting its internal marks that they wanted for the game. And out comes Aaron Greenberg, if I remember correctly, to say, hey, no, this is false. This is hit and surpassed. This is a breakout hit game. It surpassed all of our internal milestones for what we wanted out of the game. And it's great to see Tango's a good, beloved studio, all these different things. And of course, a year later, we see that to seemingly not be the case. This is, of course, with the added caveat that Shinji Mikami, who started the studio and was behind a lot of their games, has departed from the studio. So who knows how much that came into the decision, but that happened before this. And secondarily, a game like Redfall from Arcane Austin, which came out to not very favorable reviews, right around 54, if I remember correctly, on Metacritic. But if you recall... yeah, trust me, I'm aware. I've never been burned by Arcane before, but I got burned there. Look, all that said, the interesting thing is that Microsoft made it an account to go to the game, and Phil Spencer himself said, that they were going to support the game and get it up to shape and polish it to where it needed to be. And then as late as September of last year, if I remember correctly, who is no longer with the company, Pete Hines from Bethesda, hit the PR, said that they don't give up on games like Redfall, and instead they will continue to support it and develop it and get it to where it goes because it's a game they believe in. And again, we see that not being the case here. So there's a little bit of talking out of both sides of the mouth that seems to be happening, which is something that's pretty common in the industry. So before we go to the community standpoint on this, Chris, we haven't talked about this yet. How are you feeling about this? Do you think this was an inevitability? Is this just more of they were going to close whether or not the buyout happened or not, or at least there was a risk for them to close because of the fragile state of the industry and many industries? Or where are you at?
Well, I mean, there's always risk of anybody to close at this point. So sure. I would say that from the jump. But no, I think the funny thing is, like, this week has been, in my opinion, the first two examples I've ever seen of true goddamn monkey's paws coming true in real life, right? Where the first one, Phil Spencer gets Activision and instead no longer has a first party company, right? He gets Activision and all of a sudden we're a third party publisher. And then, Drake's been dissing Kendrick for years and now he's a known pedophile. So you can't
Jesus Christ.
You can't always
you're gonna get Universal Media Group on us. They're gonna be like, we need you to redact that statement, please.
That's okay. Kendrick cleared copyrights. We could play the songs right now and be fine.
Nice. Okay, go ahead.
So no, I just think that's the most interesting part. Is it just seems like Phil Spencer got what he wanted and at what costs. It's like Thanos from Endgame or Infinity War. It's like I got what I wanted, but cost me everything.
Yeah. I know that we are far from the only people that were saying whenever the acquisition talk happened that acquisitions are weird because in a way they give you a sense of security of thinking, okay, we're under this big company's wing. We're far less, our money's more consistent and it's less crazy. And there's a far less chance that we'll close down, or at least we don't have to think about closure in the same way because it's out of our hands now. And so there's a niceness for independent studios for sure to kind of go from being like, we have to constantly be on top of knowing where our next, source of income is because that's sort of taken care of. But of course, we've mentioned plenty of times that it comes with the added stress of you never know when a company needing to cut cost or reorganize or whatever will come and the scythe will come for you next. And the complicated part there is it often seems like outside looking in that those closures often come after it seems like the publisher themselves is pushing really strange, requirements onto these studios. And we've seen it happen plenty of times. But at the same time, I don't want to act like we've been innocent and acting like sometimes the thought of acquisitions are fun. They're exciting. They're crazy. And sometimes you can get hyped and be like, wouldn't it be wild if PlayStation bought Arrowhead? And I can tell you right now, seeing what I already knew to be a potential truth here come to fruition just tells me no. I would rather Arrowhead stay independent so that their fate is not, completely determined by another company. But yeah, it's interesting being on both sides of that, because it is exciting to feel like a company that you enjoy and that puts out products consistently that you enjoy buys another company that you enjoy and puts out products that you enjoy. It feels like, oh, great. It's like a match made in heaven. A lot of people thought Bethesda and being bought out by Xbox made sense because they enjoyed a really close relationship. But as we see, even when it feels like a match made in heaven, it doesn't mean that it always ends up in the, all love and hugs and no closures and we love everybody. So it's a weird thing to talk about.
I don't know. I actually kind of disagree with you, where I think the problem with these acquisitions wasn't a studio. It's the fact that they bought multiple publishers for billions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I would be as worried about Arrowhead joining Sony as I would be about the smaller teams at Square Enix, or even something like Sega. It's like, I'm not trying to shit on Sonic. I know people like it, but like, does Sony look at that? Obviously, I guess Sonic's actually a terrible example because of the movie and all of that. But you wonder if they
IP
look at some of those teams.
is worth enough money,
right? But you wonder if they will look at some of those teams, and when you're pumping out, again, I'm sorry, but when you're pumping out a vast majority of 50s, it's like, are you valuable? When, let's be honest here, Sony would be buying Sega for Persona, Atlas, and Yakuza. That's the biggest stuff out of there. And I'm not saying the other stuff isn't important, but I'm saying, does Sony value that, right? Where I think the big stuff comes with, okay, we've identified Arrowhead. They made Helldivers. That's a phenomenon. We're going to invest in their next game. We might as well bring them into the fold so that they have more resources, Don't forget, Helldivers 2 is made on an engine that doesn't exist anymore. So Helldivers...
It's not supported anymore. That's the best.
I think it was straight up discontinued. But
it means that you can make games on it forever, but it's not going to get it's not getting any updates that make developing on it easier or better. So they've just been fighting a war of having to build up on an engine that is not getting actively supported to better support PlayStation 5 or anything,
Right. And my point is just basically, obviously, Helldivers 3 on Decima as a first party team, or Helldivers 3 on engine that doesn't get support because they can't afford it on their own with the little money Sony's pumping in. That's all a reality too. So to me, again, it just goes back to doing things targeted,
Well, and I think that you bring up something that's big on this that that's hard to go through, because everyone, to some degree, had this. We had built up. Well, everyone's strong wording, but plenty of people had built up this dream idea that, with Game Pass being a platform for small games to have more of a feel in the market, and Xbox wanting smaller games that are less investment to help pad out the service, a lot of people thought Xbox buying Microsoft, Xbox, whatever, buying Activision means that all these studios that have become Call of Duty studios can break off and do all these great IP again. And we're going to see Tony Hawk come back out. And we're going to see Guitar Hero come back out. And we're going to see Raven Software break off and make another Singularity. And like, is all that fun to think of? Sure, it is. But do you also know what the bigger reality is? What does everyone know Activision for?
Call of
Duty. What does everyone know Blizzard for? The handful
StarCraft.
of games they already make.
Heroes of the
And what does
Storm.
everybody know King for? Mobile gaming. And the
Right.
point that you're getting to earlier, right, is it is the more fringe teams that may stick around when a company is completely owned on their own by shareholders, and there's someone with enough interest in what those teams are doing to be like, yeah, it's cool that they still want to make a new Crash Bandicoot game. It's like that's cool. But when you're getting bought up from people who are like, yeah, what do you do best? Why did we buy you? Well, we bought you because you're Call of Duty, and Call of Duty is the biggest gaming phenomena that there's, I want to say it's one of the biggest gaming phenomena, and it consistently pulls in this much money. It's a known quantity. King Mobile is a known quantity and brings in this much money and gives us a wedge into the mobile division of gaming that we've not been able to break into. And then we get Blizzard for all these computer/console games. And so when you look at the purchase, it makes sense that you would want to kind of shed the weight of all these other things. So why would you let a studio break off and make a Singularity 2 or make a new Pitfall or whatever the hell it be? It doesn't mean it's impossible, but I think anyone who really tried giving that much credence to think it could happen, it's because it's very fun and easy to lull yourself into a sense of Microsoft states how much they care all the time and all these things. And so it's fun to think, oh, well, with Game Pass and the players being first and these IP and this vast quantity of IP, yeah, all that's true. But they bought Activision for what Activision does right already. And they're going to thin out things that aren't necessarily working. They bought Bethesda for the big parts of Bethesda that usually do well. And they're probably going to thin out the parts that aren't doing as well. And you got to couple all that against the fact that Microsoft made tons of money last year. And they're making money this year as far as anyone can tell. But this is a cut cost thing because with a purchase like this, there's expectation you're going to have so much more income. So, kind of pulling down on that, I see your point, Chris, of you look and you think of big companies buying this for the biggest resources and the biggest things that they can benefit from, and they're probably going to find a way to either basically little as much as they can away and just kind of shelt that off, and then also look and be like, where can we help pump up the things that we know already do well? How can we better support Persona? How can we better support Yakuza? How can we better support this side Yakuza thing with Judgment? And you have all that figured out. So, yeah, to your point, I get it. But before we let the people answer the question, it's a complicated part of the question, but do you like the idea of studios being given a chance to spin off, support themselves, or be bought as an alternative to immediately closing? Or do you think that because of the nature of big companies that they can't afford the time needed to see that deal through because they need to show quick, profits or quick income cuts?
It's that, but it's also like, what are you getting that from? Like, what is Roll7 getting other than staying together that they can't do outside of 2K's, watchful eye? Not that they would be watched under as if they went back independent, right, and stuck together. They wouldn't be under 2K, but if they wanted to work with Rollerdrome or Ali, the things they're known for, they would be doing it for 2K. So I almost wonder, like, why they would even want to do that.
Because I'm assuming you're saying, like, IP so valuable, you imagine that 2K would try and hold on to it.
2K would hold on to it. There's no, like, I imagine that 1,000% would keep their IP.
Well, hold on.
Very rare examples. There's like one good example of that.
IO Interactive is a wild.
And that's because Square Enix is fucking stupid, because Square Enix didn't think it was valuable. That's American companies are smarter than that, because American companies are steeped in greed. American companies know that maybe one day Rollerdrome will become a cult classic hit, or in 10 years, Sony is going to pay them $5 million to put it on the PS8 Classics collection, and it's still free money for them. So they're never going to give stuff away. Square Enix wanted to get out of American or outside of Japanese development, and they didn't understand what they had. Because if they understood what they had, Hitman would be up there with Final Fantasy. Sorry if that ruffles any weeb jimmies. That is aggressively true. That Square Enix would be Final Fantasy, Hitman, Dragon Quest, but they fumbled the bag. They did the same thing with Tomb Raider, because had they given Tomb Raider more time, right? But they overestimated what they were doing. Because if they had made good Tomb Raider games, which those games were fine, but they weren't
those games are solid.
Great games. They were good. They're good games. That's okay. But they could have had Uncharted. They could have tried harder. But instead, as Square Enix does, they made boring open world trash that was filled with too much collectibles with a decent story and fun gameplay. But it's boring open world trash for the vast majority of it. Every time I try to go back, it's like, oh, go get this fucking antique poop glass from the ancient times, and you have to climb over 8,000 obstacles and shoot a rope across this thing and slide. It's like, bro, just make a good game. Talking a lot of shit about Tomb Raider. I don't really mean that. Those games are fine. I'm just saying Square Enix fumbles the bag, and the Hitman fumbling is the biggest example of them fumbling the bag. That team was making James Bond, and you just let them leave. That's insane.
But yeah, you're right. A lot of the time IP is held on to because IP is kind of viewed as this evergreen value that has some inherent value, just even if it's just sitting there. There's a reason that Konami hasn't just sold all of its IP, despite the fact that for 10 years they didn't give a shit about making games.
Yeah. Pachinko. Yeah. But even look at Toys for Bob, right? They got closed down, they went independent. What are they doing now? Working for fucking Microsoft. So all they got out of that deal was less security.
Yeah. Well, okay. It depends on how you view that, right? Because if they're getting closed down anyway, let's just be real for a second. If they're getting closed down with no option or choice on their own, or we choose to buy our company back and be ourselves and stay open, but partner with Microsoft, where Microsoft's not having to foot the actual payroll in the same capacity. What they're getting is more security. They're getting the security of staying open, but with the risk of long-term not having someone who's going to, flip the payroll. So it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, it's all it is giving you your fate back in your hands for as long as you can handle it.
I feel like it would be like if we were roommates and I paid the entire rent and cooked you dinner every night. And then one day I was like, you have to pay the rent, but I'll still cook you dinner. That's all they're doing. That's all it is. I don't get it. Like, I don't see what the value was. Rather than go open your new studio, get away from Microsoft, who clearly didn't value you, right? If Microsoft is closing you as a studio, now you're going to make a Spyro. Then, yeah, we'd love a Spyro game, but we don't want to pay that much for it. So you take the risk. Here you go. We look like the good guys because we let you leave, but you're still going to make what we want. And if he dies, he dies.
Yeah, we're not responsible for your healthcare or anything anymore. Because really, that's the change. If you really want to go into it, it's not even actual payroll. It's all the extra shit that payroll is involved in, which is health insurance for your employees, sometimes life insurance for your employees, paid sick and vacation time leave. And instead, when they break off, you go, okay, cool. You get to control how all that happens and you figure out what people pay, and people pay their own thing for it. But now we're not responsible for it. We're not having to pay for all these different, aspects of your payroll that aren't directly tied to paying you. And I say that because I work for a company where I see that in action. Thankfully, they're not as corporate about it, but they make it known like, hey, this is something that we have to account for. So we need you to quote this much to help cover this for every single employee we have here, because this is our minimum that we offer everybody. And that's a lot of money. You think about what they make and you're like, well, that definitely covers this $20 an hour, $15 an hour, whatever it be. But it doesn't really, because they pay you $15 an hour, but then they pay about another $12 to $15 an hour in extra benefits for you as a means to entice you to work for them. But eventually you kind of just go, fuck that. I just don't care enough about y'all to want to do that. So how about you work for us, but all we do is pay you the payroll. You figure the rest out on your own.
Yeah, that's fair life.
And, it's really weird to see. So let's check in real quick on what some of the people had to say. So we have No Fate over on Twitter, one of our longtime listeners, longtime patrons. He says it's a shame some of the people losing their jobs don't get together and set up their own studio. I'm surprised this step isn't more common. I'd be tempted to work on my own little side project at home while working for a studio, just in case I was let go. Okay. Look, I love the sentiment. And I think sometimes we do see new studios arise from studios that are meeting their end, as I'll say. But I think, as can be pretty clearly said, if I had to come home from work and do more of the shit I was doing at work, eventually I would just go crazy. So I can't really blame these people for not wanting to create their own game on the side when they're already making a game every day at work.
Can I ask you a hot take then?
Yeah,
or a hot question? I don't know. Controversial question. Should have. So the answer is yes, right? But I still want to hear your take. Should someone who doesn't want to bring their work home, in this case, their work being a creative project, be developing video games?
I mean, okay. So you have to slice this up into.
I'm not saying it's a good question, but I'm curious because you think somebody without passion, and that's the thing, the passion to come home and be like, I got to get this done because I want to see it through. Not
100%.
I want to make sure
but
my
here's
boss
the difference.
is happy.
Here's the difference, though. I think the difference here is we're talking about somebody who makes a game, hopefully with passion, for another company, and then has to have enough endurance and, I guess, ability for their passion to continue thriving to get home and work on their own project. And look, Chris, we can kind of speak to this a little bit, but it's in a different vein, right? You and I both have careers that we have to work at, but then we get off, and with some of our off time, we do the podcasts and we put it out, we promote it. And with some of our other off time, we're writing a book. And you're writing a book, and we're working on this card game, and we're putting time into this thing we're passionate about. But we're having to be careful not to put too much time into that, because otherwise we run the risk of having our entire day be no downtime. So in the sense where there's a clear distinction between the two, I don't think it's wrong for someone to want to come home from making games just to start making another game and be like, no, this is too much. This isn't healthy. Because there's a flip side to passion, obsession. And obsession is not always healthy.
Call it obsessive if you want, but I think that's the clear difference. Is for me, writing and working on the game is downtime for me because it's fun.
Oh, yeah, but here's the difference. It's also a different thing than you do at your actual career.
Sure. But again, if this gets big, I'm sorry.
Well, hold on, back up for a second, Chris. Let's look at it this way. You're passionate about gaming, yes?
Yeah.
All right. You love Dave the Diver.
I do.
But you yourself said when all you were doing was playing too much Dave the Diver, you got too much of a good thing, and you started to kind of look at it like,
But I don't think creativity belongs in that box. Like, I don't think you can passionately create something and need to put it in a different box, whether it's work or not. I'm not saying that you shouldn't separate your life. And I'm not even saying that the point that we were having this discussion about was a good point, but I do think there's an argument, right? Even looking at a lot of the games people talk about, they're uninspired, they're bloated, they're just used to fill time, right? If people with more passion were making games, maybe there'd be less games, maybe the industry would be less vibrant, maybe it would be more stable. Because again, I don't understand the argument of, well, this is what I like, or this is I can't work on my creative project because I need downtime. Because I don't think that's how creative projects get done. But I just don't. I don't like. I couldn't be as far in my work as I am if I didn't come home. Like today was my day off. I spent the entire day writing and editing.
Yeah, 100%.
But I would do that if I got home from work today at 10. I would sit here until 2 and do the same thing. So I don't follow the logic of I need the time. I'm not saying that you don't need time away. Sometimes I do like to go outside, But
Well, again, I think it's just across the board. It's a different thing because, Chris, I think that you and I both come from a perspective where I can straight up tell you, I am not passionate about selling furniture. I'm not.
yeah,
Work feels like work. And then I come home and the passion project that is work
yeah,
feels like passion and fun. And so I don't mind the work because of the enjoyment of doing it, because I don't get that in my actual career.
yeah. But I think
And that's fine.
that's
I make a good amount of money and I do my thing. But I actually think if I did the thing I was passionate about for a living, right, there would come times where in my free time, if people were like, hey, I want you to do more of the thing you already do, sometimes I'd be like, no, I'm good. I want to not do that for a bit because I love doing that. And I'm so grateful that I get to do it day in and day out. But I also have other interests and other hobbies. And that's like the interesting thing. We don't quite see it in the same light because of the fact that I don't want to say unlucky because I don't think that's it. I'm lucky in that I have a job that is good enough. Like I get paid pretty well. I don't hate my job. I get a lot of freedom in it, but I'm not passionate about it. But it puts food on the table. It allows me a life where when I get off of work, I can come home and have the mental capacity to then do the things that I love, playing games, working on the card game, talking with you about the projects that we're working on, writing music, developing a fucking card game version of our game. These are all things that I can do because of the security that the job that I'm not passionate about affords me.
right. And I guess the point I'm making is that you don't work in a creative field. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you mean by creative.
You're not
I only say that because I quite literally have to be creative with the use of space, and I help people design and pull furniture together.
Yeah, but I have to be creative about recipes, and I'm not passionate about my fucking job either.
But you're not passionate about the creative part. Because here's the reality. Most of life is creativity. Most careers really do involve some sense of creativity, and the better people in them are creative people.
Semantics, because no person is going. My brother.
So you're saying entertainment is not
my brother is not in a creative industry because he sells cars and he has to create a sales pitch. It's not a creative industry, Brett.
Sure, but all I would argue is that there's more creativity to my job than selling a car, realistically speaking. But it depends.
I've seen my brother sell cars. I don't even know if that's true, but I'm just joking.
But I don't look. I think you mean entertainment anyway. I think you mean entertainment that has a very obvious creative back end that plays into the product that you're selling.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Me writing my book is like, yeah, you could. If I became an author, it would become my job. But I like to write.
Sure.
So yeah, there would be that pressure. But we're also looking. I don't know. We're looking. I just think if you're doing something that you're supposed to have passion in, you should. That's why the crunch thing has never made sense to me, because you should have the passion to, or you should at least have that little bit of passion to say fuck it. And I get it. There's that career mode of like I do it when I'm at work where I'm like, I'm paid for 50 hours. I don't need to be here for 51. Like I understand that. I think the point again I am making is that this is a creative field that you studied and you wanted to get in here and you wanted to make video games. You chose to work at Treyarch because you wanted to make Call of Duty. And then it's like, oh, I can't work more than 40 hours. I don't get that. And the main point I'm wondering is if we were getting projects from smaller, more passionate teams that, yes, cost less money, but sold for less money, that were made by people who wanted to work their hours at work and then come home and finish the problem they were stuck on.
You know what
if
you're
maybe we could
right
mitigate.
Now, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about having a productive working.
You're just talking about indie games. People who are not making games at the behest of some corporate shareholder, who are making games that they all wanted to make, and they're all putting into the game in a way where their input and their creative input within it is not necessarily being diluted by 1,000 other employees who are also working on the same thing. Look, I really want to. There's a lot of great and a lot of negative to AAA gaming and AAA development for the fact that thousands of people go into making that game. And I think that people go and they feel like my input in this is I'm making something at a studio that I love and I love their projects, but I realize that I'm not fulfilled by the part of this in which I'm doing because I'm not playing a big enough part. I'm not actually my own boss. I'm being told what to do and I'm having to do it. There's a lot to be said about the happiness, even if there's a stress that comes with it, of people who are specifically working for themselves and making a project that they decided to do and that they have a passion in. Because the reality, if we're being honest, Chris, I think that it's foolish to expect even half of the workforce working on Call of Duty to be passionate in the way that you're talking about.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is maybe we don't need fucking Call of Duty.
That's what I'm saying. Kill AAA for a bit. Let's hit some indies.
Because like I don't know, because I'm not trying to downplay people's job. Like, this is an industry. I'm not trying to say that firing is good or any of that stuff, but I'm wondering if we get back to places where teams are smaller and yeah, maybe there's no holy shit, I'm making Call of Duty 18. I'm so happy. But you went to school for an FPS focus and now, hey, you're the best FPS guy on the planet. You're the reincarnation of John Carmack, who's not dead. Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I just think, there's a lot of jobs that you could tell me right now. And I'm sure your wife and child notwithstanding, there's a job that if I went, I'm going to pay you $30K, but this is what you get to do. You'd take that job.
Yeah, if I didn't have my family, life would be a lot different. Yeah.
Well, yes, of course. But I'm saying like a job like that is a job that you would probably dedicate yourself to because if you're taking such a pay cut, it's because that's what you wanted to do. And I think that's kind of what I'm saying. I think that's, quite frankly, is a governmental problem that we can't even rectify, where maybe the solution to a lot of the problems in the games industry is just the fact that people are doing this for work instead of doing it for passion. And that's why
there's a large subset of people that have to do this because they spent time doing this and this is what their work history is. And people will be like, yeah, we have no benefit of you when you can tell me that you've level designed for 6 years. How the fuck does that work into our accounting? It's like whatever.
Exactly.
But my
I guess
point,
the argument
you're right. People are having to do it from
right?
I don't fucking know. Look, there's always a tension. It's kind of like we talk about the tension between the creative and the person who actually has the money to make the creative vision come true. And that often those are two different people. And the people with the money do not have enough creative vision or drive to make a product, but they want to benefit from someone who does have enough creative vision to make something. And that's how you get something like John Carmack and all these people coming out and doing something and creating these teams that do grow up to eventually be so huge. But Chris, let's take a second and come back into what we're seeing from some of the people so we can keep this episode going, because since we are recording on a different day, I do need to be mindful of what time it is. So going back in, we've got a response from Liam, who says that would be amazing if Sony slid in the DMs and acquired Tango. One acquisition to another, baby. But then we have Kusanagi Killer over on Twitter who said, big time, I was never a fan of them, talking about acquisitions. These companies would have done better on their own. I honestly think Ninja Theory will be next after Hellblade 2. Kind of crazy that Hi-Fi Rush was met with so much praise, and here we are, sent to Game Pass to die, and a kind of sad emoji to kind of cap that off. It's interesting to see games like Hi-Fi Rush. It does... Whether we'll never know, but it does kind of feel like, was its port to PlayStation some kind of final Hail Mary to see if the game could become profitable enough to stave this off?
They didn't give it enough time if that was the case.
I would agree, but who knows? Because they always talk about how the boom is biggest at the start and then the tail end kind of goes. But who knows? It's a difficult thing to talk about, and I think it brings and begs a question of what we've long said is hard to understand. What does engagement mean? Because 3 million players engaged with Hi-Fi Rush, what does that actually mean from how you view the game to have done monetarily? How do you extrapolate money from engagement? That's so difficult.
You don't.
I am sure someone has it, but I don't know how you figure that out. You would almost imagine it has to be how much money is Game Pass bringing in, how many people are playing on Game Pass. If we evenly take all the people who are on Game Pass and the games they're playing, and we just cut them in and say, are we making enough money to cover all these studios? And if we're not, that's a problem. And I think it's pretty obvious from the answer of Game Pass that they're not, because they're still trying to keep Game Pass at a price that draws people in so they can get a big enough group of people in Game Pass so they can eventually do the Netflix thing of just slowly rising the price until one day you're like, how the fuck was Game Pass $10 a month and now I'm paying $21.95?
That seems cheap.
I'm not even saying that you're wrong and that seems cheap. I'm just saying there will come a day where you do say that, and then there'll probably come another day where you go, how am I paying $30 a month for Game Pass? There's an argument to be made, Chris, that $60 a month for Game Pass is worth it if you really want to look at it, because you're spending one game a month in terms of budget, but you're getting.
I think you're right. I think the fundamental problem with Game Pass, realistically, is that, especially if it got that expensive, I really don't think it could go over 30. And I think 40.
Yeah, I think 30 to 35 is kind of your cap, yeah.
Because I think the reality with Game Pass that people don't see is, yeah, there's this huge library, but if you're buying Game Pass for Starfield, you probably paid for Starfield conservatively twice with your Game Pass subscription if it's $60.
Yeah.
So the argument becomes, I'm buying a Bethesda game, I'm going to cancel Game Pass and just spend the $60 because it's the same thing, but I'll own it forever. And then it becomes, why don't I just play the games I'm interested in, spend the $60 that I would be spending on Game Pass this month, and own it forever? And then Game Pass doesn't need to exist.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I want to get to it, but real quick, I want to get to one more before we end on the one from Rude Days 93, which is more of an Xbox person. And so I always like hearing from him and TT Dog about how they're viewing these Xbox moves and what they think about it. So RMG0731 says, I think most gamers, especially outside of the Xbox diehards, media people, podcasters, always agreed that mass consolidation would lead to this point. So no sentiment change. In terms of selling, I think we are past that point of that being feasible, with money and interest rates having gone up significantly, which is true, as well as simply writing it down for tax reasons, writing it off, I think is what he meant, for tax reasons for these big companies. Partnering with certain teams on particular projects seems to continue to be the way to go. To be fair, Sony's recent year buys outside of Housemarque and Bluepoint are facing similar problems and similar results. Talking, of course, about how one of the biggest ones, which is very particularly Bungie, is not doing too hot. And that was a big acquisition as far as PlayStation is concerned. So yeah, I agree with a lot of this. Part of the reason I said this is because I think enough of us who have been gaming long enough can remember the multiple times that EA went on sprees of buying and acquiring studios, and those studios are just not around anymore. Visceral's not around. BioWare is on the verge of not being around if they don't turn ship pretty, if their next two games don't do well, there's a very real possibility that BioWare is gone. That's when you look at EA, their track record shows that if you're not consistently turning out the games they want, you're gonna hit the chopping block pretty soon. So yeah, we've seen this time and again. That happened with EA in the 90s as well. Happened again in the mid to late 2000s. It's a tale as old as time. It's just where we are. So, But let's get to Rude Days 93 now. So he says, to the first question, no. Because would we even have a Bethesda now if Microsoft did not buy them? We know they were struggling, and can we say that Starfield and Redfall would have been much better without Microsoft, especially if they had to be released sooner? I guess the implication there is that when they didn't have Microsoft's money to allow them extra time, Bethesda may have forced them to release these games in potentially worse states. So, because it sucks that those studios closed, but it's also to act like consolidation is the sole reason behind layoffs and closures. We've seen the financials of Bungie as well. Chances are they may have been gone if not for Sony. Sometimes consolidation is just delaying the inevitable. We've also seen Xbox financials, and without Activision, Xbox would be in an even rougher spot right now. Isn't that the truth? To the second question about, of course, the option of seeing if selling the studio should be on the table goes, yes, for sure. But then that's a thing where you have to have an interested buyer. And no offense to these studios, but one studio is a mobile developer, another studio is a support studio. Arcane Austin, their last game was terrible, and the game before that, which I thought was good, talking about Prey, but didn't make money. And then Tango, who did release a game of the year and had a great horror series. But is there another company out there that could take on the payroll of a studio like Tango? Man. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think, of course, we have to be careful at saying that consolidation is the sole reason for these closures. But let me take a human approach to this for a second, because I haven't said this yet, but I think it bears saying. There's a moral side of this, and then there's a business side of this. And no matter what, if you actually separate the two and look at the business side, there's probably a very easy pathway to seeing why this was important. But if we want to look at the human cost and think about what this means from a moral side and all those things, we don't have to do. But as somebody who does have creative drive and creative endeavors and pushes to do them, I got to say, there's something about being bought by a studio to try and, or to be bought by a company in an effort to try and rid yourself of the stress of having to know whether you're going to make it another day because you're taking that out of your hands. That's a nice thing. But there's also something to be said of, I'm sure it is really hard for an independent studio to fail on their own merit, to spend time making a game, releasing it not hitting the mark, and them not being able to stay afloat. But it has to suck so much harder to release a game that does well and feel like at no fault of your own and with no ability for you to make a change or make any kind of impact on it, you are just being closed. Because that feels like failure in spite of your success. And that has got to feel like an absolute terrible thing to go through for people who have been at these studios for a long time, or maybe even founded these studios and were staying at them. So you're right. Maybe it wasn't all consolidation, but I'm sure for these people, what they're feeling like right now is that if they would have closed down when they were separate, definitely for studios more like Ninja Theory. Of course, the Bethesda is different because Arcane Austin was still ultimately could have been closed by Bethesda at any point. They were still under an umbrella. But if we end up seeing studios like a good example would be Roll7, right? Chris talked about them, the games they're known for, they got big on and all this. And they got bought out by Private Division about a year ago. And here we are, they're shuttered. And I'm sure that they have a feeling of, if we just wouldn't have sold, we still may have closed, but we would have closed because of our own shortcomings and not just because somebody looked at a number on a sheet and said, we can't, we don't want to.
And that's the biggest thing, right? Is, maybe, I don't know, an independent company can survive a lot more than a big company with shareholders.
Yeah. Because shareholders are going to go, why the hell are you keeping these people on pay?
I mean, a shareholder is going to go, why are we paying this much money and their game made $1 million? Oh, well, it got good Metacritic ratings. Right, but it made $1 million and they cost $5 million a year. It's going to be 5 years until their next game. We don't make money on the studio, so shut it down. And then that's why Tango closes. Not specifically Tango. But,
but for example.
Right, but and that's the reason. And, the one thing I'll say here is, specifically to Rude Days, is I think I'm not going to push back against Arcane Austin, whatever, but I will say I think it's kind of an insane thought to think that another company wouldn't have taken on Tango.
I honestly think so as well. It would not surprise me if Capcom was like,
dude, Capcom, Evil Within. Hey, we've got the Evil
Konami?
Within and Resident Evil. Konami, hey, we want to put a good team on Silent Hill. I that's the one where I'm reading this and I would push back pretty hard. I think Tango's is the one situation. But even Arcane Austin, hey, go make Prey 2. That was really good. I think the mobile studios, whatever. I didn't play the Doom game that they made.
Sure.
But I think choosing to not credit Consolidation for, at the very least, making this happening less of a fight is like picking Drake in the Kendrick Drake rap battle. Like, you're just objectively wrong. Like, you can make good points, and yeah, there are some good raps in the beef, but Consolidation lost here. Like, this is simply because if you look at Bethesda as a whole, High Five Rush Game of the Year, that again, it's not the same team, but that publisher is responsible for Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls Online, which is a massive MMO. They just put out Starfield. Doom is huge. Wolfenstein is huge.
Wolfenstein 2 actually didn't make money. It may have eventually, but it didn't at first. It was actually one of the games in the multiple line where, like, Dishonored 2 was a critical darling and did not meet sales expectations. And then it happened again with Wolfenstein 2, and I think it happened again with something else. I think Prey, of course, was in that. And it just kept happening to where they put a game out, and it was like, oh shit, we're not hitting expectation.
I guess what I'm trying to say is more that.
But you're right.
Maybe the mobile developer closes, or maybe Arcane Austin closes. But I don't think you see all of this if Bethesda closes, and I think, or if Microsoft doesn't buy it and Bethesda stays independent. Even Bungie, like, they probably would have gone through these layoffs and all this kind of stuff. But I will say, us knowing that Bungie was struggling before this and Bethesda was struggling before this doesn't excuse Consolidation as a good thing. Actually, all that means is Sony and Microsoft didn't look at the books and they're fucking stupid.
Or what it really means is that, and he did say sometimes consolidation is just delaying the inevitable, but that's actually the reality, is to say that for anybody who thinks consolidation is always a net positive or a safety net, it clearly shows that if these things can happen after this, that's just not the case. And I think everyone intuitively knows that, but you like to think that something you love getting bought, it's the warm fuzzy feeling, right? You're like, oh, cool, I love Bethesda. They got bought. They're probably safer now.
Yeah.
But no one's safe from corporate. I mean, it's just a reality of when you have numbers on a board and people who want to see a certain amount of numbers because they've invested, at the end of the day, enough pressure from enough people who have enough stakes is going to get something to happen, whether or not you wanted it to happen or not. It's the super unfortunate reality of business, but it's also what makes people be able to make tons of money, which is an arguable question as to whether that should be a thing. But you know, it's an interesting. It's what I say. There's a moral side of this, and there's a business side of this, and I think a lot of people wish that the moral and the business side could at least overlap a little bit more, and there'd be a bit of a Venn diagram. Yeah. But I think for the most part, when you're talking about corporations and then morality, that's a really hard thing to do. I think you can get a lot closer when you have things like independent studios and then looking at morality, because I think you have companies like Larian who go, well, this is what we thought was best for us. This is still what we think is best for us. This is a choice that we're making, and we're kind of going through that. And we're going to stay independent so that we know that any decisions that are made are because of us, both for the good and the bad. We're going to take on the weight of both of them. Well, and that is a hard thing, but it's a cool thing to do.
Interestingly enough, Bungie shows that if a company wants a studio bad enough, they'll give in to some demands.
Sure.
You know, even Larian, you know, these studios, who knows with something like Roll 7, but let's say Sony bought Larian tomorrow and we found out that all the games are multi-platform, PC was still the lead console, and oh, by the way, there's a clause that if Sony decides to close, Sven can buy out the company.
Yeah.
Like, none of that would be surprising. But I think, to put a cap on my thoughts, right, it's a slightly different industry, but industry adjacent. And the best way I can say independent versus consolidation is Colin of Last Stand Media talks about all the time, where he's like, they have, I think it's like 13,000 paying patrons. And one of the things he talks about is like 13,000 paying customers for IGN would shut down IGN. But Last Stand and Colin are extremely successful on 13,000 people.
Yeah.
And that's the point, right? Me and you know, let's say we sell to 3,000 people all our stuff. Depending on our prices and how that happens, that could be enough that me and you don't have to work anymore, right? Depending on how we go about it. But we sell that to Wizards of the Coast, and that's all we do with that money. We're getting shut down. Our stuff is closed. That's the difference.
Yeah, no, I think you're right because you look at a lot of the stuff for something like Colin's setup, and he's not having to pay for a building. He's not having to pay for a bunch of things that you have to have. It's a much smaller, tighter workforce. People are probably doing more jobs, but more efficiently. And it's interesting hearing people talk about because everybody wants everybody to stay employed because, of course, that's a beautiful thing that people have a way to support themselves and have work and have sometimes. People need work as a meaning in life. All those things are true, and they just need a way to cover their bare minimum. But I can tell you, almost every industry is bloated with a large group of people who are 100% not necessary and not efficient. And yet, there's not, because of corporations and how policies end up playing, there's actually not a very good way to get rid of those people. To make a more efficient and better running thing. When people are like, this restaurant sucks. Yeah, guess what? There's a corporation protecting these people who suck.
Well, you want to know a great example of that? So one of the jobs I've left, right? I had this guy who was awful. He called out of all his shifts. If he did come, he came late. He would come out of uniform. When he was here, he wasn't working. And I tried to fire him and they wouldn't let me fire him. The company wouldn't let me fire him. Turns out, long time after I've left, he is one of the only people left there, and nobody likes the guy because he doesn't work, but a company is protecting him. It's that same kind of shit.
Yeah, it's weird because the same company that will just cut people off for seemingly no reason as far as we're concerned are the same company that will have policies in place to keep people who are quite literally doing the company a disservice in place.
And the reality
and you see it on both sides,
The company would rather lose money on a crappy employee than pay them unemployment, which is the only reason I could fire anyone I wanted right now. But the biggest reason that my company doesn't let me do it is because I can't just be like, oh, you sneeze ugly, you're fired. But it's because they would just end up paying this person anyway for a period of weeks. So then you have to go through that whole process. So even in running their business, the best possible staff is still determined by greed.
All right, let's look around at the rest of the news and stuff we have going on today. So first thing up, Media Molecule's new project is, quote, more of a game than a dev tool, end quote, says Mark Healy, a dev who departed the studio last year. He says, quote, I don't know exactly what state their project is in now. I don't think it's secret news that they're working on a new IP, for example, he said to the interviewer. And that's about as much as the news is. But, Media Molecule is one of those teams at Sony that everybody's always kind of secretly worried is going to somehow get closed. I've brought it up a few times. I mostly agree with Chris that there's no reason for how cheap they are to close them. And that the weird thing of any industry, the weird thing about any industry is that there is a point where if you can get a small enough team with enough accolades that there's PR in keeping them open alone, So that's interesting though, because Dreams is a really cool idea, but it is one of those things where you look at it and you're like, I don't feel like the thought process behind monetization in this game landed. I continue to this day to be surprised that they didn't make it to where you could self-publish your games through them, sell them, and then they took a percentage off the top. That seems so intuitive. And
why wasn't there a PC release on day one?
Yeah, it's really wild to think of this really cool creative tool for development that is in and of itself essentially a graphic user interface engine that allows you to make games strictly from a GUI is insane to not have on PC, and to have like RPG Maker lets you do exactly this. And then they make money off of the games that people make within RPG Maker. Seems crazy to not do this with something that's more broad than RPG Maker, where you can quite literally only make RPGs. So do what you will with that. I just think it's an interesting thing. So, of course, it's not a return to Little Big Planet, and that's fine because I think we need to see something new, but I'm curious what it ends up being.
First-person shooter.
Jesus Christ, dude. If they turn Media Molecule into a fucking games as a service studio.
Dude, they're making a first-person shooter but with user-generated bullets.
I mean, first of all, You just gave me a great idea for a first-person shooter that is essentially just Balatro, to where you can buy different bullets and they have different effects, and you can stack them on there. And the things that you do add, like the effects, add onto the bullet in the order in which you place them, and you have to overcome different obstacles by doing a certain amount of damage that specifically comes from how much.
Did you want to hear me out? Hitman Cross Balatro.
I mean, let's go.
I'm into that. That sounds fun as hell.
I was thinking more like Sniper, go like the Sniper series, but Balatro.
Yeah,
you have one shot and you aim, and then you look at all the things that are in the path that you're choosing to take. And then you go, okay, cool. I have these effects stacked, and the order of these effects is going to mean that when I hit this, it'll do enough damage to hit this, and when I hit that, it'll give it this time's damage. So it'll continue to go through. If I hit this, it'll curve off and bounce and hit this, and then it'll eventually hit the target. I'll have 1,000,000 points, and I have beat the level.
I like that idea. I'm into it.
Damn it, Chris! I need to be a better game developer. I'm pretty sure my limited coding knowledge is not going to get me there, but I do like the idea. So if anybody wants to buy it off of me, talk to me. We'll flesh it out a little bit more. Chris, you can get in on this.
Beep it out of the chat, out of the podcast today.
Yeah. Now, you know what? If someone will make the game, I don't even give a shit. You can just have the idea. I would. If you would at least credit me, that'd be cool.
Yeah. What would you want to be credited as?
Just Brett Beck. I mean, I'm cool with that.
Oh man,
live on.
Gotta be more creative than that.
Nah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So it's the problem. I don't have enough drive to worry about all that stuff. It's why when I put out music, I think our music's pretty good. Here's the problem. I do not like promoting. I've said this a million times. I hate it. It feels unnatural to me. So I just make the product, put it out there, and just hope whoever stumbles across it. And that's unfortunately how my creative process works. I just like making the thing. Mm-hmm. I would love for it to get big, but not off of my back, because I don't know how to approach that. I don't know how to do that. I don't get on social media enough to do that. I hate TikTok, and that's where you'd get big now.
You're missing out on TikTok, man. First of all, it's almost over. Second of all, it's a ton of fun.
It's almost over. No, when I think of TikTok, it's kind of a play up, but I almost have that, the Grinch when he's like, loathe entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the. But here's the thing. I'll actually give you a second on this. I have come around to the fact that my wife will save TikToks that she thinks I like. I may have mentioned this before, but I will sit with her and I will just watch the TikToks that she saved, that she wants me to see, as a way to spend time with her and to connect on the thing that she likes with her.
That's the thing, though. If you were using TikTok, all you would get is the TikToks that she thinks you would like to see, because it curates to you as a person.
I know, but I don't. I just like spending the time with my wife and enjoying the things that she enjoys and she thinks I would enjoy.
But Brett, you're missing the opportunity to share an activity. How about you save TikToks that you think she would like? You know how much that would mean to her? I'm sorry,
here's the problem. She won't play games with me. She will sometimes. It depends on the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's go through the next. We have 2 more pieces of news we're going to cover. And actually, I'm going to cover this other one first. This one's pretty small. Remedy had a co-op game that was called Project Kestrel that they were working on, formerly known as Vanguard. And they announced this week that they have canceled that cooperative multiplayer game, and they are doing so in an effort to focus more on Alan Wake and Control, which is interesting because we talked recently about how Alan Wake seems to still not necessarily be hitting profit marks, and yet Control is coming up as well. And it's another game that I think did well, but I don't know that it did well enough to necessarily cover this. So it's an interesting move, but we go back to the conversation a little bit of Remedy is independent. They do have some shares being bought out by a Chinese company, but Tencent, I'm pretty sure. So I guess that's their way of getting a little bit of stability in an otherwise, independent role. But I appreciate that they continue to move on and kind of take their destiny as much into their own hands as they can manage.
It doesn't hurt when you have Rockstar paying for you to remaster games.
That's true. That is true. This last one's pretty interesting, and we're going to wrap it up after this so that we can keep this show in a reasonable time. Sony has gone against democracy as the company finally made live a feature that was announced but delayed, a PSN account verification to play Helldivers 2 on PC. Just last week, Sony announced it would follow in the footsteps of Microsoft, Bethesda, EA, Ubisoft, Rockstar, Blizzard, and 2K, among many others, to have this type of verification for its games. In preparation for the change, Sony made a fascistic move by removing the game from sale in 150 countries that do not bow to the PSN's oppressive power. However, as our system is a democratic one, Steam players voted on this change by changing once positive reviews for the game to negative ones. This also includes Arrowhead's previous title, Helldivers, and our benevolent leaders in Japan have decided to end this process, announcing that Helldivers 2 would no longer require a PSN login or account link, which sent their happy citizens back to Steam, restoring order in their reviews. Though, at least as of last I checked, the game is not back on sale in Steam in those 150 countries. That may just be a process where it takes time for Steam to do that. Unsure, but that's where we are right now. Mm-hmm. All right, so this brought up the conversation once again about false advertisement, about expectations and all these different things. Look, I do feel I'm not a PC gamer, so I'm going to throw that out. I have a PC and I play on it sometimes, but I'm not primarily. I feel like the blow up over this was kind of insane.
Okay, good. We're on the same page. I got worried for
Here's
a second.
The thing. I can understand being upset that you have to do this because you thought you didn't have to and you don't really want a PSN account for any other reason. I get it. But for this to become like the next battleground to stand on kind of goes back to play devil's advocate, right? Kind of like I did when we were talking about Stellar Blade and its censorship, like last week. Part of me thinks that this is just people choosing to die on this hill so that Sony doesn't continue to push further in the future. I really think that's what's happening. This seems crazy because every publisher, almost known to man, does exactly this. So I don't know. I could almost see it if Sony was the first to step into saying, hey, we're forcing you to have to make an account from us that you also link, even though you have a Steam account. I could see that because you don't want Sony to get away with it so that all the other people think that they can get away with it. But Sony is just finally doing the thing that everyone else is doing. And they're being treated like they are stepping into a bold frontier of just shitting all over gamers. Well, it's a little ridiculous. The one thing that I think is worth talking about here is the fact that they knew they wanted to put this back online eventually, and yet they still continue to allow this game to sell in the 150 countries that do not have PSN. And there are undoubtedly people who bought the game who now cannot play it, or who now could not have played it had they not stepped back on this role. That's where I can understand the outrage. The rest of this just feels...
This is just weird. Fucking baby PC players. I'm sorry. PC players are babies. I had the same thought when the Epic Store came out. It was like, oh, I have to download another launcher so I can play Epic exclusive games, but all my games live on Steam. It's like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? I have a PC too, bro. I know how hard it is to click. I mean, it's not that goddamn hard. Like, what do you get? Like, this would be like me coming on the podcast being pissed off that I have to unplug my PS5 so I can plug in my Xbox. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And you would have me on your side to a degree because some of it was ridiculous. But you would have me on your side if this wasn't an announced thing from day one that this was going to happen. That got delayed because the game launched buggy. And that's not a pun. So I don't understand this other than pure entitlement. And there are people out there who are celebrating like, oh, we won. It's like, no, you look like idiots. And now Sony just announced already Ghost of Tsushima requires this.
Yeah.
It's just going to come to other games.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part. It's going to come to games they think are going to get less ire because of it. And it does help that Ghost of Tsushima is entirely playable from a single player standpoint without the count link, but you can't play any of Legends. without the account link.
And here's my question. Why even let it be playable without the account link?
If you're going to do that anyway.
A PC is always online, first of all. PC is always online. So at that point, if you want this to be something that's ubiquitous, this is more of a business conversation than a moral one. But if you want having an account on PC to be a ubiquitous thing that everyone knows, hey, I'm playing God of War Egypt Saga. I don't know what the fuck they're going to call that shit. God of War King Tut. I don't know. When you're playing that game, it comes to PC, I'm going to need a PSN account. If that's what you want, then why are you giving the option of, well, the single player doesn't need it? I'm not saying I care. I don't give a shit. I'm going to play it on PS5. Actually, I'm not going to play Ghost of Tsushima. But my PS5 game, I'm going to play there.
Yeah. But like, look, I mean, I still just think at the end of the day, it feels weird to dogpile on Sony for something you, as players, all chose not to do when every other company started trying to allow it. Like, again, you didn't do this on Uplay 10 years ago when they made it to where you couldn't launch Far Cry 4 without opening Uplay first and having your account linked to it. Like, come on, why are you doing it here and now? It just feels like you're choosing the battle at the wrong time. If you're going to do that, do it with every game then. That's, I guess, the other thing, right? If you're going to go against Sony, let's turn the tide against everybody. Let's go to every single publisher and be like, we're done. Right. We don't want to link to any more games. We don't want to link to anything. We're deleting our Uplay accounts. We're deleting all these games. We're not telling anybody else to buy them. Let the active player numbers drop so that some of these evergreen games on PC start doing poorly. Then you might get a change made. This just feels like which I get it. It feels like a battlefield that people can win on. So they choose to only battle Sony on a game that's popular right now that Sony really doesn't want to see drop down. And that's because it feels doable. It feels reasonable. Yeah. You can convince enough people to do it, and it'll have enough of an impact that you can have this victory. And I've been there. I've done that. There was a time where old school RuneScape was going to block out an HD plugin that a guy spent years working on and they knew of, and they didn't tell him that it was going to be blocked until 2 weeks before it was supposed to come out. And he was like, hey, guys, sorry. Even though they knew all this and I tried making sure it was all right, now it's all being viewed as it's going to be wrong, and that anybody who wants to play it will get banned or anything if they want to play it. And so, of course, the players went to Falador, which is what you do, and you riot. And you just walk around and have everybody flood one world and crash it and say, spend the whole time saying stuff. And it eventually worked, and they got what they wanted out of it.
He will not divide us.
So you get to that point, and it's just kind of like, okay. I mean, I get it, but I think that there's not too much more. I think Chris and I mostly agree on that. So, Chris, we're going to do one question so that we don't go questionless throughout this whole episode. We went a lot longer than I actually anticipated. So I'm going to give you dealer's choice, and we'll get to the other ones next week whenever we come back around. So, Chris, there is 27 years later. Have you ever played Castlevania Symphony of the Night? That's one of them, and we can, of course, it's a little bit more in there. One of them is lots of negative reviews on the gaming side. Do you think there's anything that will ever get you to boycott, stop buying, or playing something? And this is, of course, because of the Xbox controversy. Or the last one here, 78 years of Sony today. Any standout things from Sony overall that you remember or want to shout out?
No, I mean, I think the second question sounds the most interesting to me. No offense to everyone else.
Gotcha. All right. Rude Days 93. You're coming back around. He says lots of negative news on the gaming side. Do you think there's anything that will get you to where you'll boycott, stop buying, or playing something? I ask because as more Xbox leaning guy, I see how Xbox is on fire and everyone either abandoning ship or telling people to abandon ship. But I'm just continuing on and playing games that drop in Game Pass. So, Chris, as we talk about a lot, as companies, both on computer, Steam is doing the same thing that PlayStation's doing, which is doing the same thing that Xbox is trying to do, which is get you ingrained so much that you've spent so much time, money, and energy into their ecosystem that it creates a bigger and bigger and bigger barrier for you to want to leave. We talk about this often. If you wanted to leave PlayStation, you would effectively be leaving probably 3,000 to 5,000 games behind that, and years of achievements and friends lists and all these things. So what would it take you, or do you even think that there's anything that could literally get you, short of PlayStation closing down, to be like, I'm done or I'm boycotting?
I honestly don't know. Because it's going to sound so bad, but I feel like Hiroki Totoki could come into my home and execute my family And like after the funeral, I'd be kind of side-eyeing the PlayStation 5 like, I want to play Dave the Diver right now.
I could play it on Switch, but I mean,
but I have 54% of the trophies. Like, do I want to abandon this life? But the outside of the obvious fantasy, right, is I think for me it just entirely depends on why. You know, because something like Nier for me, which we've talked about and you know full well, like I refuse to play Nier because you could buy the trophies and I didn't want to support a game. I didn't want to send the message that I was okay with that because I do care about the trophy metagame.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
But if GTA 6 comes out and I can buy all the trophies, I'm going to play the fuck out of that game. I'm going to buy the collector's edition. It doesn't matter. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Oh, my whole shit is frozen. So sorry, you'll have to edit that out. But
no, that's gold. I'm keeping that.
Can you see me? Am I moving?
Yeah, you're moving. Everyone else can see you too because I'm leaving that in. Look, I get your point because it does hit a point where, realistically speaking, it's really hard to just want to drop. I mean, because there's games I've bought that I haven't gotten around to. There's games I've bought that I want to revisit and replay, and I would hate to have to buy them on a different console and maybe restart or lose my saves or lose my friends list of people who I know that while I may not play with them all the time, I may one day be like, oh shit, that dude and I played Helldivers. Maybe he'd be down to play Helldivers again because I'm really wanting to get back into it. But guess what? Maybe none of my other friends are at the moment. And it's hard. I tell you that it's hard at times to feel at odds with with the platform of choice that you spent so much time into, because I do feel really strongly about PlayStation's handling of censorship and blocking out games that other manufacturers who are known for blocking more commonly are still letting happen without issue. When Nintendo is being less censorial than you see from PlayStation, that feels weird. That feels like, how the fuck did PlayStation, the console for adults that was the whole thing was about how those games are kids games. Come play your adult games. We've got Metal Gear Solid, and now you're letting tits and ass be on Nintendo, but you're covering it up on mine? Come on.
Sony allowed me to see Abby getting blasted from behind.
Absolutely blasted. Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Like with Rude Days, it's like, what? If you're invested in the Xbox ecosystem, why would you change? Why? Like, I get that. Like, even if every single game came to PlayStation tomorrow, why would you stop? Like, what is it going to benefit genuinely invested to jump off the Xbox? That's just like, for me, if every PlayStation game went to Xbox, I'm not going to buy an Xbox. So, like, what does it matter? You know, I get that
there are people that definitely jump, right? There are, and I say this with love. Like, Blake is a good example of a consumer who kind of constantly shifts between the two and has enough of a library and presence on both ecosystems that you can kind of at any point in time guess which one he's going to be into and be like, okay, there he is. But there's a reason that Call of Duty and Call of Duty timed exclusivity was so important in 360 and even in the PS4 days, and continues to be important now in terms of where do most people play, is that what really is going to win the people. I think what Chris is trying to say, right? If you're an actual person who has enough investment in an ecosystem to even bring a question up like this, that means you have enough skin in the game that very little things are going to really move you. The question really comes down to, people do jump ship, but the people who jump ship are the much less, they're gamers that are much less involved, and they're far more passive, and they're just normal day-to-day players who buy a few games per year, and it doesn't really matter whether they're playing on PlayStation or Xbox. So they may choose whichever one is more readily available or more in line with what they can afford, like the Xbox Series S, and they'll just change as they see fit based on what opportunity presents itself to them. That's really where it comes down to. Maybe an exclusive will move them, like somebody really wants to play Helldivers 2, doesn't want to buy a PC, ergo, okay, I guess there's nothing that's really on Xbox that I feel like sticking around for, or maybe I'll buy a PlayStation 2 if I can also do that. And I think that's typically what you find into. So the winner, as much as we like to act like it's because of diehard fans, the winner is because of the casual audience. We've said that time and again, and that's what matters. So for the people like us who are embedded enough in the ecosystem, it's so fucking hard, because even censorship, which is something I just inherently hate, and it feels like sometimes you get into a point where you have to do something because of the expectations, didn't make me change, even though I still wish they'd stop being so censorial. Mm-hmm. So take with that answer what you will. I mean, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, look, the reality is backwards compatibility was a boon for the audience, but a terrible thing for the companies, because Microsoft will never get me as anything more than a casual player on their console. And speaking for myself, that I own, like Brett, you've seen the evidence. I think there's over 1,100 games on my account. I ain't going nowhere.
Yeah, there's quite a bit.
And that's where Xbox loses me, where it's like, because that's the funny thing when you bring up Call of Duty, is that happened going into the PS4 generation. So it was important in what you're talking about. In the generation you're talking about, the Call of Duty deal was huge. But I'd be willing to bet, and actually we're seeing it play out, because it's not exclusive, but Xbox is the lead platform for Call of Duty in the future. And the casuals that you're talking about don't know that this the deal with PlayStation ends. But I saw the Xbox news at the bowling alley I worked at when it happened. So they probably know that Xbox owns Call of Duty, and Xbox console sales have dropped 30%. So I think right now what you're seeing is that people are stuck in their platforms and not moving from them.
Yeah, it'd be really surprising if I saw something that actually did make a large quantity of the population of any of either console realistically move. I think a lot of it's performative too, if I'm just being honest. Social media rewards people for being performative. So there are people who are saying they're doing one thing and they very likely aren't.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest problem with Elon Musk's Twitter. And I'm not an Elon Musk hater, but you can't trust anything on Twitter, because anyone with a verified account is getting paid for anything they say that does well. So if I had a verified account and I tweeted out Halo announced for PS5 tomorrow and got 1 million views, I would get paid, and that's just a bullshit lie. So
all that matters is it got the 1 million views.
Exactly.
All right, Chris. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Anything else you want to say before we roll this thing off and thank our patrons?
No, we're having a good time.
All right, buddy. Thank you to all of our patrons who headed over to patreon.com/Nartech and gave as little as $1 per month to help support this show. There are many of you who do even more than that. We are ever so thankful. It helps us keep this show going without having to dig into our own pockets. And Chris and I are so thankful to have that. Chris, thank you as always for joining me for yet another episode. We'll be back next week, hopefully on normal schedule and with less of a time limit that we're having to fight against. But with that said, we shout out all of our patrons while we still have the ability to do so. And the list isn't too crazy long. So with that said, shout out to Duh Overlord, Spencer, Brandon Edwards, Alex, Barry Rogers, Stingray X, Matt Tubbs, Easton328, Aztec King, Lecheon69, Bailey Robertson, Mark Schutz, Cypher Primus, Kyle Grimm, Rude Days 93, Kevin Bacon Bits, Danny Villiobos, Jehudi MD, No Fate, Josh Ayers, Derek Porter, Matthew Green, and Sean Sanderud. Thanks to each and every one of you. See you next week.